Steve Jobs didn't walk into Apple one day and go, we're going to make a fucking slick phone with a touch screen and like it's going to change the world. I'm pretty sure he was like, phones kind of suck, guys. What can we do about it? And like,
Hello and welcome to the Unicorn Leaders Podcast. My name is Fahad Al-Tab, CEO and founder of Unicorn Labs. And on this podcast is where we interview leaders and founders on their journey of creating high-performing teams and high-performing cultures and organizations and to create unicorn startups. Our goal is to bring you the insights, the tools, so that you don't have to make all the mistakes that we did, all the mistakes that they did, that we can learn from it, we can grow from it. Today, the guest that you just heard is Sam Witherspoon, founder and CEO of Immersive Data Labs, talking about creating a compelling, all-encompassing vision. Today's podcast is brought to you by one and only Unicorn Labs. Check us out at www.unicornlabs.ca. So today is all about creating an all-encompassing vision. And I think that actually shows the specific difference between management and leadership. Being a really good manager is about managing resources, managing the people, managing the project, what needs to get done, when does it need to get done, having deadlines, and ensuring that we stay within the bounds and actually accomplish and achieve the objectives. But leadership is about creating that compelling vision. It's about enticing people. It's about exciting people. Leadership requires us to influence people towards a specific direction. Leadership points the direction and management helps put the pieces to actually get us there. It's the two in combination. And by having an all-encompassing vision, having something that's exciting, that is emotionally capturing, something that really persuades people to be both excited and committed to getting there, that is what helps us create our high-performing organizations. Vision is one of the last pieces of high-performing, but it's one of those pieces that shows up in every part of a high-performing team. But the reason we keep it as one of the last pieces and the sixth level of the high-performing teams is because it is iterative. It is constantly changing and we need to constantly pivot. While psychological safety and empowerment, those don't necessarily pivot. We need them as foundational pieces, as foundational stones that build the team. People stick to the team and they stay with the team because of the relationships they develop, because they feel empowered, because they can communicate with each other and have productive conflict, because there's a culture of leadership that's fluid, because it aligns with their sense of purpose, and finally, because there's an all-encompassing vision that pulls them towards it. There are 7 elements of an all-encompassing vision that I want to share with you, and these elements that you can take with you back to your team, back to your company. So if you're a manager listening to this and you're thinking, well, what sort of vision do I have? You have a vision for your product, vision for your marketing campaigns, vision for what you are creating. But if you're a founder and you're a CEO and you know how important a vision is, and you know that it's constantly iterative, but sometimes all the words get mumbled and jumbled in the different descriptions. So I'm going to give you 7 elements. And in these 7 elements, when we piece them all together, we can create a strong vision that can be both iterative and yet lasts the entirety of your existence. The 7 elements of all-encompassing vision begin with a core purpose. This is the non-changing part. This is the core reason for being. This is the core mission. This is why do we do what we do. To understand our core purpose, sometimes we want to just ask the question of, what do we do? You can start with, we do X for Y people, right? So we do X services for Y people, kind of fill that statement in, and then ask yourself why 5 times. Why do you do X for Y people? And why do you do that? Why do you do that? Maybe by the 5th why, you might get into the cloudy space of we help people. And it's just a bit too broad and a bit too bullshit for you. But at the 4th why and the 3rd why, you might get to a reason that is far more meaningful than simply what you do, but why you do what you do. And that's the core purpose. That reason can last while perhaps the actual products you create and the business you have can change. Core purpose lasts because it's who you are and it's a reason for being. What follows is the core values. These are the guiding principles that dictate what you stand for in the good times and the bad times. This is how you do what you do. And core values, we're using the word core here because core values need to exist, that if one of these values made you lose money on a transaction and made bad business decisions because of this core value, you would stick by it because that's how core that value is. Core values are not convenient values that just align with when business is going well. Core values are things we stick to no matter how business is going. They're what we believe in. They're what when we take a stand, and it's what we fight for and what we will push for. So core purpose and core values is the central part of your 7 pieces of an all-encompassing vision. And these parts are the non-changing pieces. These are the parts that will stick for 100 years. As long as your organization exists, as long as you exist, these are core to what you believe. The next pieces are part of that strategy and that vision that you're used to hearing for. The third part is the vision. It's the position or the status that your company aspires to achieve in a reasonable time frame. So here's the thing. Vision is actually achievable, while purpose is ever enduring, something that we continuously go after. Vision is something we can actually achieve in 5 years, in 3 years, in 10 years, in 15 years. Vision is somewhere we can be. So what is the vision? Where are we going? And what is it going to look like when we get there? The next part are target BHAGs. We're borrowing the word BHAG here from Jim Collins, is the big, hairy, audacious goal. The targets are part of the vision. So perhaps your vision for 5 years is where you want to get to. The targets are the specific metrics you're going to use to assess progress towards that vision, to give yourself actual targets and measures to get there. Then number 5 are the strategic and operational priorities. This is the actions that you do, most importantly, the actions you don't do in pursuit of your vision. This is what you say no to and what you say yes to as you're trying to pursue your vision. Your strategic priorities should be revisited almost every 6 months. Your target BHAGs could be revisited every year. Your vision every year likely going to withstand longer, but your purpose and your values, they sustain themselves for longer. Number 6 and number 7 are promises that you make. Number 6 is a brand promise. What promises are you making for your stakeholders as you operationalize your strategies and your vision? What are these promises that you're going to make? And this is all stakeholders, your employees, your board members, your customers, everyone that really touches your brand. And lastly, your leaders' behaviors, how leaders act on a daily basis. This is the expectation we have of our leaders. When we put these 7 together, we call this the all-encompassing vision. And in today's podcast with Sam, we're going to unpack a bit of the core purpose. We're going to unpack a bit of the vision and a bit of strategic priorities. And he's going to bounce around to share with us how he went through a consistent iterative process to actually achieving their company vision. Let's hear another little clip from Sam.
The people who have succeeded with us over time have been the ones who are like totally cool with, like, we call it type 2 fun, but the stuff that's like, it's not fun when you're doing it, but it's fun after to think about that you did it. And like, my life has been about pursuing type 2 fun.
Sam is going to share with us perhaps choosing an early career in a field that caused him a bit of emotional distress until he found something that was more meaningful and more aligned with his core values and purpose. As a founder of CEO at Immersive Data Labs, it's a company dedicated to increasing the safety and security of Canada and its allies through the effective, transparent use of data. And in this episode, he's going to talk about how important it is not to chase money for the sake of making money, but staying true to yourself and your vision. He's also going to discuss how the key to a good team is the relationships you make with those around you, and how every company working with clients is at a client's mercy at some extent, and what we can do about that. He's going to also share some entrepreneurial challenges. He's going to share more about what this type 2 fund is all about, some big mistakes he's made, maybe a little bit about a turkey farm that he owns as a vegetarian. We're going to tune in to hear and learn more about Sam's leadership experiences and how we can develop an all-encompassing vision. All right. Hello, Sam, and welcome. Man, I got to say, I'm excited to have you on this show. This is new for us. You know, we're developing this podcast. We're having some amazing people. And immediately when I thought about this, I was like, I've got to have you on. So first and foremost, thank you. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for being here with us. Sam, I like to get into the meat of things right away. And you shared with me a really interesting concept called a champagne problem. And I want to get right into that. We're going to get to who you are, all that stuff. Our guests will learn that. But I want to get into one core insight that you had right away, a champagne problem. Can you tell me a little bit about this, Sam? And I mean, along the way, you can also tell me a little bit of what you do and that. We'll get into that. But let's dive into it.
Yeah, so champagne problems. It's sort of a running joke in our company. We've been around for about 8 years. And the problems of like tomorrow, like when you've got more revenue, when you've got more people, when you've got like all of your other problems solved, it becomes a champagne problem because like there's no more worries. You're cracking champagne, you're sipping champagne and all your worries are gone. And what we've learned over 8 years is there's no such thing as a champagne problem. There's just new problems to deal with.
That's interesting. And that kind of provokes the ages and stages for companies, right? The problem of growing from 1 to 10 employees is different than the problem growing from 10 to 50 and so on and so forth. And you're at an interesting stage. I think the theme of this episode that we're unpacking is the importance of vision, the importance of purpose. Tell me a little bit about why you believe having a mission, a purpose, a vision is important for the team.
Yeah, we went a long time without any real like purpose or vision, and it caused a lot of harm and stress, I guess, are probably the two words that come to mind the most. For a while, our purpose was making money, and what you pretty quickly learn, or I guess what we pretty quickly learned was like, money doesn't solve all your problems. It doesn't make you happy. It doesn't resonate. And I think, that's reflected in one of the core values we've established as an organization, like don't be a mercenary. And I think like what we really mean is like, don't chase money for the sake of making money. There's bigger problems in the world than, lining your checkbook. But I think it's been a struggle.
You said it caused harm and stress. Tell me about, like, those are strong words. Like harm is, picking up on that. Give me an example. Like, how did the decision making and the fact of chasing money, and you know what, by all means, like, I love that you've admitted this, because I think a great deal of entrepreneurs, when we get into the space, we're trying to make money. Like I think that is a big motivator, and it is not to say that it's not still a motivator, but it's not complete pictures is what I'm hearing from you. So tell me about kind of the harm and stress piece there.
Yeah. So we started off in the legal industry, and we actually started off functionally like a consumer-facing app, trying to sell divorces online, and we did a really good job of selling divorces online. Had a lot of customers, a lot of users. And the Law Society investigated us, me particularly, for a couple years. Wow. And what happened, though, all the way through there was like none of us cared about the problem. We literally picked it because we were like, there's a huge gap in the market. There's
I mean, divorces. That makes
money to be made. Yeah. And like, I was embarrassed to tell my family what I did at one point. Like, I wasn't running fucking Pornhub. Like, I'm not in this like ugly industry, right? I was selling divorces, but like the sort of realization that we eventually came to was like, none of us cared. None of us wanted to do that. It was just that we were pursuing an opportunity for the sake of its pursuit, money, and like, it caused emotional distress. I wasn't proud of what I was doing. I think the same, I don't want to speak on anyone else's behalf, but like the same is true for my co-founder, Bennett. He was not proud of what we were doing at all. We were there because like we felt there was an opportunity, and we walked away from it as a result.
Yeah. Yeah. You use the word emotional distress there, Sam, and as a leader, right? Like the fact that the vision didn't connect to your own values caused you as the CEO and leader to have emotional distress. I can only imagine the emotional distress on your team.
Yeah.
Where was that? Yeah. Can you share some of that?
Yeah, I think, I think a lot of people would have characterized their relationship with the company as transactional at the time. And, you know, I don't really fault any of them for it. My relationship with the industry was transactional. So like, how can I expect any different of the people around me? And I think that on its own was probably a strong indicator that we weren't in the right spot.
So Sam, you know, there's been a huge transformation in you and your business, and today you've got a solid, clear vision and a purpose. And I think, you know, that moment of realization doesn't come till later on and slowly iterates. And I think that's one of the key lessons here. Is I think their vision is seen almost like, oh, we got a vision, as if it's like an aha moment that comes from the sky, but really it's perhaps an iterative vision. And I want to get to that. I'm going to open up that question, but I want to get to it because you took me back a little bit to one of your first ventures, which is this selling divorces online. But let's take people back just a little further. Tell me, who is Sam? Sam, where are you from? Where are you in this world? And you know, maybe where'd you go to school? Give me a little bit of the background to Sam.
Yeah. So I grew up in Ottawa for most of my life. I spent a few years at the start of my life till I was like 10 years old, outside of Toronto in a tiny town actually right near Guelph. And then when I finished high school, I went back to Guelph to study engineering. Worked in consulting for a couple years, and then went to law school.
So you finished an engineering degree.
Yeah.
That was in which specific?
Enviro. I was an environmental engineer.
Environmental engineering. You went into consulting. You spent a few years there. Then you went back to law school.
Yep. Yep.
Awesome. And then after law school?
So I went to University of Calgary for law school. I skied a ton, and the sort of joke when people ask me like, why did you go to University of Calgary, is because like they're the only ones who let me in. It's the truth. Like, it's the only place I could get into with engineering grades. And so I did really well in law school, though. Got a clerkship. Clerked at the federal court. Worked for one of the most phenomenal people I've ever worked with in my life, Roger Hughes, and just a brilliant mind. Really challenged me as a person when I probably needed it most. And then after that, worked at a law firm downtown Toronto for 4 months, September to January, and then quit and started this.
Let me hold on to that for a second. You just mentioned the impact of Roger Hughes, impact of a leader on your life, a mentor. You have also in past shared with me, Sam, the impact of a not so good leader in that same field. And, you know, a moment to juxtapose the difference between how a phenomenal leader can shape us versus how an emotionally distressed, unintelligent leader can shape us also. Perhaps give me a little bit more about Roger Hughes. What did he shape to you today? If you look back, like what were some of the pieces from him that are showing up in you today?
Yeah, he was the first sort of leader or mentor I had who gave me trust and space to sort of sort it out on my own, while still sort of like holding me accountable, you know, slightly from a distance. And what I mean by that is like, he didn't tell me how to do my work. He told me what he wanted the output to be, and didn't tell me how to get from A to B, and let me sort it out. And like, there were so many sort of hilarious moments. He was pretty old school, still is pretty old school. And like I had to wear a suit and tie to work every day. And there was one day I ran up to his office to ask him a question, and I forgot my blazer down in the like cubicles that I was working in. And he didn't even look up from his desk. He was writing with his fountain pen, and he just pointed at the door and he just said, "Come back when you're dressed." And and it wasn't mean, it wasn't condescending. It was just like, "Come back when you're dressed." And there's so many good moments. He like I've never seen someone who just like understood how to interact with with society at large in a complex way. Like, I have so many good stories of those times. So feel free to ask me to unload. I got lots.
Yeah, I love that. Perhaps because this is a leadership podcast, what was a leadership insight that maybe he didn't verbalize, but that you took on as a sponge watching him? You know, you mentioned he was phenomenal at how he worked with people, but where is that? You're laughing, so I guess you have a story here. Take it away.
A great one, yeah. So we had this case. It was this old pensioner. He was like 90 years old, okay? He was on Canadian pension plan, which is like punitively deficient if you're retired and reliant entirely on it. He got divorced, okay? And he got divorced at like 90. Again, I'm not passing judgment on this guy's decisions, but like, it's pretty late in the game to to look for an upgrade or whatever his plan was. But anyway, pension is divided evenly between him and his spouse. So now he's living on half the amount. A year later, his ex-wife dies, and he goes, I want my pension back. And the Canadian government says, you don't get your pension back. That's a rule, okay? Hard and fast rule. It's the law. And so Justice Hughes wanted to do the right thing, which was get this guy's pension back. He's like well below the poverty line already. So how do we get this man his pension back? And so there's no way. We can't do it. I was like, the only argument we have is we are the last court of equity in Canada. And so being a court of equity means you can make a decision that violates the written law, provided you feel it is like the equitable or right decision. I'm paraphrasing a bit, and I'm a bad lawyer, so like if a lawyer's listening,
this is not legal advice. This is
don't try to raise this argument. But anyway, he was like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. And I was like, I threw up my hands and I was like, listen, I don't know if there's anything I can do. So the day of the hearing comes, and he tells me, go sit at the back. Normally he made his clerks sit right at the front, right underneath him, so we were within arm's reach, okay? But today he's like, sit at the back. Watch the parties and tell me what happens after I leave. And so he storms into the room, door goes like banging against the wall. Everyone stands up, because you stand up when the judge comes into the room, and he slams his hand on the desk, and he looks straight down the middle of the room, and he says, if I have to come back here in 10 minutes and make a decision, you're not going to like the decision I make. And he storms back out, slams the door, and I sit there and I'm watching, and like you can see Department of Justice lawyer is like, oh fuck, I'm going to lose the Canada pension plan, like clawback. I am going to be dead meat. This is my career. So they like scurry over. The guy's self-represented. He has no money. They scurry over and they're talking. So I like sneak out the back door, and he's like, are they talking? And I was like, oh, they're talking. And like, I see what's going on now. I'm like, oh shit, this is like 5D chess. Like you're onto something. So I go back in. He comes back in another couple minutes later. They stand up. He goes, have we settled the matter? And DOJ goes, yeah, we've settled the matter. And he's like, great. Walks out, never has to make a decision, and he just played like the perfect line. There was no other play left to get this man his money back, and Justice Hughes nailed it. And it was just like it was like brilliant. And it was leadership. It was not making a decision to make a decision. It was exactly what he needed to do. It was flawless. Yeah.
Brilliant. That is flawless. Wow. You know, those kind of, those type of people, those characters, they have their own sort of life visions, right? We're talking about company visions, but it seems that they have this life vision, this life philosophy that guides their leadership practice. Did you ever kind of grasp at what maybe some of his life philosophies and visions are? I don't know. That's a deep one. I don't know how well you know the guy, but.
I mean, like, if you spent any time around him, I'm not going to pretend to know, the deepest, darkest motivation of Justice Hughes, but, he spent years, he was like one of the best litigators in Canada, if not North America, years perfecting his craft. He took acting classes, like he focused on being the absolute best in like his area of expertise. And, he also found a way to have fun and do what he cared about outside of work. But like, it was like a relentless focus on perfecting the things that he knew would make him better at what he did. And, that always left me as like, this guy, he was an example. He led in that respect by example. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. You kind of perfecting and learning, and I think, Sam, you embody that. As an individual, I know you're a huge reader. Like, you're on a new book every week. You're suggesting new books to me every time we talk. It's phenomenal. You kind of really embody that. And if I may, I'm going to take a meta moment here and kind of just think about, to our audience, just like how impactful a leader was in your life. The fact that you can retell these stories, the fact that you can feel his values. And I mean, I see it here, the emotions that you have in regards to this person who helped shape your life. And I think that's a part that we sometimes forget as leaders. We're building companies, we're building product, we're trying to create value. But at the end of the day, at the dinner table, your staff are talking about you to their spouses. They're talking about how you impact them, how you shape them, how you've emotionally engaged or disengaged them. And I think that was just such a beautiful example there, Sam. Okay, so I've taken us off tour, but I'm going to take us back to her. So you spent some time in law, then you decided to make the leap to go off on your own and create this divorce software app. So let's hear the decision there to, I'm going to go off on my own, I'm going to do it. Where was that?
It was a bit of a complicated road. The law firm that I had been working at the time, so this is like 2012, 2013, their biggest client was Research in Motion, or BlackBerry, represented like 60-70% of their revenue base. And I was there when Research in Motion was like, we're not filing any more patents for the foreseeable future. And I avoided the layoffs, but it's because I was like the cheapest lawyer on staff by a wide margin. It's not because I was good. Like, I don't want to give anyone the impression that I was a good lawyer. I was just the cheapest lawyer available. So there was more margin on my work. But like, there was no work to be done. I remember like I was low man on the totem pole. So I was in the office over the Christmas holidays and like, there was nothing for me to do. So I watched a lot of Netflix, and when like the IT staff came back, they like came rushing into my office and they're like, we think there's a virus on your computer, Sam. And I was like, wait, what do you mean a virus? And he's like, you're 70% of the firm's bandwidth, Sam. What's going on? And I was like, oh, I was just watching HD Netflix all holidays here because there was nothing for me to do. And I remember thinking to myself, like, the writing's on the wall, isn't it, Sam? Like you're not meant to be here. I didn't know what I was going to do when I left. I just knew that it wasn't going to be, at that firm for forever.
Yeah. Yeah. And that takes us to, the founding of this kind of divorce software, going through the challenges of that, and, brings us back to our story and maybe a climactic part of that story, the realization that this is not aligning. And, we went in maybe for the money, for the market, and you didn't shut down that business. You just simply repivoted it. Is that correct? Yeah. So talk to me through that, because it talked me through the decision making around that, but then the impact on the team. And this is where I really want to focus the rest of our episode is we make big decisions in regards to purpose and vision as leaders, as CEOs, and we know the impact on us. What's the impact on the team in that regard?
Yeah. So we were probably 6 people when we made that decision. And Bennett and I spent a lot of time asking ourselves, like, what do we actually care about in here? Like, what is
for the
stuff?
Audience? Bennett is your CFO, correct? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. What do we care about? What are the parts that like keep us coming to the office every day? And one of the parts was like just getting to work on technology. So we'd spent a lot of time working in natural language processing, so like extracting information out of written information or written data. And I think that part, it was clear we were sort of passionate about and we enjoyed. The hard part, I guess, was like, where do we want to apply? Like, we have some budget, we have some money left in the bank. Where do we want to apply this? And it took us some time to figure that out. And we had to survive in the interim to like sort our shit. And so we decided to work as consultants for a while. So just anything that we could bring through the door, we wanted to go after. But like, we couldn't consult on our own. We needed to have our employees sort of stick around and be engaged and involved in that decision. And so we didn't do this like deliberately to manipulate people. We built consensus. So we had lots of conversations about what everyone wants to do, what industries they want to work in, what they want to work on, how they want to work on it. And, you know, it became clear that like no one had a like defining product idea to start with. And the premise that we sort of set off in this new direction on was, we will use consulting to expose us to the world's problem sets. And when the time is right to pivot to product, we will make that pivot. And it gave Bennett, like in terms of vision, that's a really shitty vision, but like I'm going to call it a vision for a second, because like it gave Bennett a very clear mandate about what he needed to do financially to enable us and equip us so that the day that we found that product, we had, you know, the dry powder to be able to take some time and not have to say no to new customers, to go in a different direction. And so that's what we did. And, you know, we spent a fair few years sort of chugging along as professional service personnel.
Yeah. There's I think a few two really beautiful pieces that I'd like to kind of pull out there. One of the pieces is just how business is, you know, I teach at the University of Ottawa, so we teach a lot of business model canvases to the young entrepreneurs of ideal customer and value proposition. But I think what often gets missed is just the organic side of, this is what you think you want, but then this is what's available, or this is what kind of comes your way. And so you guys really leaned on that organic side of, well, what's available, what's around us, what can we do as we figure it out. And you spent a lot of time exploring. I think that is a kind of a thing that's not taught enough in that regard, is that you gotta stay alive long enough to figure out what you want, right? I think part of the game is staying in the game just long enough as you figure it out. The other piece that I find interesting, Sam, here is your team stuck along despite having a mediocre vision. And I know you know this from some of the stuff that we teach, but you know, that's really an interesting model that sometimes flips on its head. Most people think, well, to have a good team, you have to have the vision first. But you guys had something else that kept you together. You had really strong relationships. You had this foundation, and I think I see it from how you work with your team, but you had solid 6 people where there was, you know, significant trust, where you used the same kind of empowerment methods of giving people a problem to work with and kind of run with. I think those are some of the pieces. Maybe give me some insight as to that. Like, why do you think the team stuck in with you despite the fact that the vision was mediocre, as you kind of said? You know, it gave Bennett a mandate, kind of gave you a direction, but it was kind of mediocre. We're a little bit, you know, guns for hire a little bit within a certain area. We're going to consult here, do this. Why do you think the team stuck around?
It's a good question. I ask myself that a lot. I'm not entirely sure. I think part of it is we like each other. Like we like just like hanging out and being around each other. And I think that's a major piece. Like, we spend our free time often together in some capacity. So I think that's one piece. I think the other piece is, you know, we work well together in spite of, you know, we sort of scrap like siblings at times, but like, who cares? We work well together. And I think that, yeah, that's played a major role in it for sure. Is our ability to just sort of like just deal with shit. We like solving problems. I think that's it. That's the nugget. We like solving problems, and we solve them better together than when we're apart. Kind of like, I'm not going to say we're like the Beatles. That's so cheesy. but like,
But you just said it. You by saying I'm not going to say it, you said it.
I know. Humble brag. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah. No, but I think like we're more effective together than when we're apart, and I think we all sort of like deep down know that, and so there's a benefit to sticking around.
I think that's the not so secret sauce. That is the secret sauce, right? We like each other. We like to hang out. We socialize, and we work well together. It's enjoyable to work with the other person. I think that's the secret sauce of teamwork. Do you actually enjoy working well together? I think it's such a simple thing, but yet in many ways so difficult to cultivate, right? Like it's something that we need to all work on. Now I'm going to go off on a side story here because I think this is an interesting one. You mentioned Bennett. You and Bennett have another interesting little project that you work on too. I hear, and the rumors have it, that you are a vegetarian turkey farmer.
That's correct.
That is correct. Tell me about this. We're going off the side here, but tell me a little bit about your vegetarian turkey farming adventures.
Mm-hmm. So maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. So Bennett's my cousin. That's where I'll start this story. Bennett's my cousin. And his mom is my aunt. That's how cousins work. And and his dad, my uncle, he was originally a dairy farmer and had since moved into poultry. So he grows chickens and turkeys. And he was going to sell off his entire turkey operation. And there was something about watching sort of the family farm disappear that Bennett and I didn't entirely love. We didn't really know what it meant to be a turkey farmer, but we also came at it with sort of a naive attitude, which really helped. And we decided we were going to take it over. So we secured the loan from FCC, which is like the farm bank, with our houses, and went for it. And we grow about 18,000 turkeys every 80-ish days. Wow. And for a long time, one of the biggest battles we had was, this is pre-pandemic too, was getting people to actually come on the farm and help catch turkeys when it's time to load them off for processing. And so like,
because this is a thing, this is a phenomenon, like to catch a turkey, right?
Oh yeah. Do you want me
go ahead.
Explain?
Keep going. Yeah. I want to hear that.
First off, it happens when it's dark out. Because if it's light out, the turkeys are more agitated and they're a little too uppity. So when it gets dark out, you turn all the lights off in the barn, you lift up the feeders, you lift up the water lines, and then it's pitch black, and you go in and you just grab legs and start carrying them. And these aren't small birds when we're growing them. So, at one point we were growing in the tom category, which is what you call basically just like a really big turkey. It usually means a male turkey, but even females, once they get above a certain size, get called toms. There's something going on there that we don't need to get into, but the tom category. So they're 18 kilos. So that's like,
wow,
30 pounds, give or take. And so they're big birds and their wings are strong, and they have, the chickens have large talons, or the turkeys have large talons. And it's pitch black. And so you're like ducking down, grabbing legs, carrying them out like this, and then they're getting loaded into the trucks. And, there'd be like 10, 12 of us, and we'd be moving, like, let's say each of us would be moving about 2,000-ish pounds of turkey.
Wow.
So like you're lifting several tons of turkey every night yourself. That's like flapping and angry that it's hanging upside down at your side. And so yeah, we did that for probably 2 years. And so it starts, let's say 7 p.m. and you finish at like 3 a.m.
So you're working during the day and then doing
and
this
then
at
driving
night.
out at night and then
to
getting up and working
grab
the rest of the
turkeys
day.
at night.
Yeah.
Oh my,
It was pure misery. And like it doesn't smell nice. Probably the understatement of the year. Yeah.
So is that what made you a vegetarian, or were you a vegetarian beforehand?
So I've been a vegetarian since I was maybe like 12 or 13.
Okay.
And actually what made me a vegetarian was I started to be able to like taste the way a barn smells. So I can even like eggs sometimes. If you overcook eggs, I get the same sort of revolting reaction. And like when I say the way a barn smells, what I really mean is like I can taste pig shit, I can taste chicken shit, I can taste turkey shit. And like, believe me, I've had most of it in my mouth from catching them, and like it's there. And so I just can't do it. I can't eat it. I don't give a shit if people want to eat meat. That is entirely fine ethically and morally. I have no issue. I've euthanized many turkeys while a firm vegetarian. I just like can't do it myself.
Can't eat it. Okay, that was fun. That was good. That was a nice little side story to really introduce Bennett, who's been a big role of this and in it, because I think it's kind of introduce some of the characters, the people, part of this team that you've really built this with. So, we went from engineering school to law school to skiing in Alberta to divorce software, to where you were at this moment where things really developed consensus around being professional services around solving really difficult problems using technology, and this kind of got you down the path where I know recently you and your team have come to a real clarity on the vision and a real pronounced, and you can feel the direction in the team. You can feel the momentum that it picks up. So tell me about kind of the coming to that moment. And then I want to talk about how you feel has changed the team since those days. So this is kind of a couple direction I'd like to take us.
Yeah. So probably about 2.5 years ago, we won a contract in the United States with Department of Defense, a very potentially big contract for us. And we won it due to some of our expertise with natural language processing and information management. That contract, this is right around the tail end of Donald Trump's presidency. It sort of forced us to confront, what is it about Western democracy that we either like or don't like? And not a lot of us were Donald Trump fans, but overall we're still fans of America. We still believe in liberal democracy and the promise that liberal democracy holds for society at large. It's, it's the worst form of government except for all the others. And I think that what we ended up sort of realizing was, there's a like mission and purpose there that we, strongly agree with. So I think that was sort of this first sort of glimmer of where we wanted to head. Around that time, we put together an advisory board focused on defense and public safety, and sort of had some conversations with people who we deeply respect in the area about what some of the sort of shortcomings and where the sort of opportunities may lie. and then, you know, we tried really hard for for a year and a bit to make our way into the defense community in Canada. And ironically, we got a big contract in the United States long before we ever had anything in Canada. But we persisted nonetheless. And eventually we found our way into the Department of National Defense, Canadian Armed Forces. And it was sort of the first time where we were exposed to a mission and a purpose that was bigger than just like solving a problem for a company or for an organization. It was the first time where the work we were doing had real external impact. It was, you know, literally saving people's lives. It was, you know, literally augmenting and assisting the CAF in, you know, operational requirements. And, you know, sort of the pinnacle of that, we got an opportunity to work during an operation on the operation itself. And the work was far from glamorous. It was you know, not, you know, sexy typing behind a keyboard and, you know, matrix graphics and all the rest.
Because that's how I picture it, right? Like,
because that's
17 screens and, you know, like that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, so it's not like that.
Yeah, we weren't in an operations center. We didn't have like a big map on this display, and yeah, there was none of that. But the impact we had was, I'll be proud of it the rest of my life. And I think, you know, that really sort of pushed us over the edge. We had some other private sector customers at the same time, and when it came time to decide, like, do we triple down on defense or do we keep our options open? It wasn't even a debate. It wasn't even a question. It was, this matters to us. This is important to us. This, like, you know, hits us in the feels, and we want to be a part of that, and we want to be, you know, we want to support Canada. We want to support the United States. We want to support the UK. Like, we want to support liberal democracy. And I mean, like, we're watching it right now in Ukraine. Like, I want to stand against that. And I think, like, that mission resonates with me. That purpose resonates with me. And I think, to answer the first part of your question, that clarified it for us almost in an instant. This is where we are going to head. This is what we are going to do. Luckily, we had two products that we'd been cooking based on, you know, the work for DoD in the States, and hopefully, you know, we're able to scale that across the Five Eyes, at least in the coming years. Yeah.
So if I can jump in here for a second, Sam. So IMRSV, the company that kind of reforms after the divorce software, takes on a bunch of contracts, kind of doing some technology consulting for government, for all sorts of things, different kind of artificial intelligence, machine learning kind of opportunities. And you build the team out to about 15, 20 people. Yeah.
I think we would have been like sort of 12 to 15, fluctuating in and around there. Yep.
Yeah. And so you kind of get some momentum, build some cash flow from there, and then you start to really get into these defense contracts, and that kind of becomes clear for the team around the purpose there. And the team significantly grows from there. Right? That's a big part of the team building starts to happen there. And do you find that clarity of vision, that clarity of purpose and who you want to serve and what problems you want to deal with helped with kind of recruiting, getting the right people, getting good people in the doors, building a good team? How do you see those help each other?
It's definitely helped in some respects with recruiting, because now we know exactly, you know, we know what to say. I think as we made this shift, we knew it wasn't going to be for everyone. Google had a mutiny when Project Maven was revealed, and they withdrew from Project Maven to preserve staff. And I think that the defense industry is, for right or wrong, people have very polarized views on the defense industry, and I'm cool with that. That's part of a liberal democracy, ironically. You're allowed to have those beliefs and think those things, and I fully support people's right to do so. And I think what it gave us was the ability to own that and say, like, this is us, and take it or leave it. And it hasn't been super easy all the time. Good engineers have quit because they don't like the defense industry, and that's okay. It took us a long time to be comfortable with that, but we're okay with that, because they're doing what's right for them. I think on the recruiting side, it's much easier now to say, this is who we are, this is what we do, and like, these are the things we build and the effects we enable. And when we talk about stuff that way, it's a binary decision for people. It's, am I a part of that or am I not a part of that? And there's not really a middle ground. You don't get to like live in the middle and be a mercenary for too long when that's when that's what you're confronted with. Yeah.
That's powerful, Sam. That is really powerful. I think I've seen some of that transformation, but just that clarity, that being comfortable with, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, and this is the problems we're trying to solve, and not everyone's going to be interested in them. I think that's the power of having such a clear vision. In the beginning, you talked about how not having a vision can create this real emotional disengagement and distress. You use the word harm, right? Like, you're unengaged. You weren't even proud to talk to your family about kind of it. But this 180 that happens once you've started to clarify that vision. And what I love about this is, like, there was 2-3 years of organic, we're just gonna figure this out, until you get to this really clear moment of, now I know where we want to go, how we're headed, and I can communicate that, and that creates a line in the sand. So tell me about what shifts you've seen internally in your team. Now, obviously, there's been the difficult parts of when you draw the line in the sand. Some people are on the other side of it. That's been part of it. What's been the internal reaction in the team in regards to the clarification of the vision? And share any thoughts on that.
I think a lot of people on the team are increasingly grateful for the clarity of purpose. I think it helps them describe what they do and who they work for in a much cleaner way than in the past. They can now talk about the purpose that they're working towards, as opposed to the people they're working for, which, like, that's sort of an ugly thing to just like list off some customers or clients that you have. Like, it doesn't have the same impact, I think. So I think that's one thing I've certainly noticed with a few people. I think the other piece that's been really helpful is it's allowed everyone the space to figure out like where they fit in this puzzle and where they can contribute and where they can have an impact. Before it was like, you're a person and you are billable at this rate per hour to this group. And like, that's kind of shitty. I'm not going to lie. It's not my favorite way to treat or quantify people's impact. Now it's like, people are able to like take ownership of a piece of this and say, this is mine. I'm proud of this. Just today I was watching some conversations happen around like, I think we should drop this and use this piece because, and those aren't conversations professional service firms have. They to some extent use the tooling that like solves the problem effectively for the end customer. There's no ownership and sort of integrity in the decisions that you're making. Not that professional service firms make bad decisions. It's just like, to some extent, you are at the mercy of the customer and the timeline and the budget and the commitment you've made. And that's the reality of professional services. And as we've slowly sort of migrated off of that, we started by getting rid of the customers or the clients that didn't line up squarely with that purpose, handing them off to other professional service firms that we trusted wouldn't screw them up, so that we still preserved the relationship and respect to the people we'd worked with. But I think also it helped get everyone else who was working with us some real clear direction on where we're headed.
Yeah. See, I like that you share this, Sam, because what it says is having a clear vision isn't enough to just state it, but you have to start cutting the fat around what doesn't fit in that vision. So we're going to clarify our vision in our words and what we think, but now what doesn't fit into this vision, we've got to cut away, even customers, and really good paying customers that no longer fit into this model that we're trying to create and we're trying to build. Now, we've got a few minutes left here, Sam. Perhaps you can take me on a bit of so that's the organic journey of vision finding and forming. But if we've got some listeners on the call who are like, okay, well, I've got to figure out our vision. We're a bit on professional services. We're that. What maybe a few steps, advice, maybe break it into 4 steps here for us, just for the sake of the number 4, of like, what are certain things people can do to start uncovering that vision for their company, start communicating it, and bring it to life.
Yeah.
You can also do more than 4 steps if it happens, but I just I kind of just threw that at you, like 4 steps. I don't know,
I'm not sure there's like a cut and dry recipe, to be honest. I think one of the things that we grappled with, that we had to resolve internally first, was that like purpose conversation. Like, why the fuck do you want to be here? Why the fuck do you want to do this? Like those questions. And like, it's important you swear when you say them, I think, because like they are really important, and like the impact that they have. If my mom's listening, sorry. But like, answering those questions first and foremost. It took us a long time to even figure out we had to answer those questions, right? Like this was not something that we like started the company and we're like, purpose, that's what we need here. We were like, money, that's what we need here. And like eventually we realized like money and purpose can often be at odds. And I think like there's lots of money to be made probably in selling, weapons to the Russians. You will never catch me my entire life going anywhere near that space, but I'm sure you can make a killing. Like literally, you'll get people killed. It's awful. But like it's one of those things where like we had to resolve what mattered to us, what was important to us. And I think that that was sort of like step 1. Until we sorted that out, pretty much everything else was kind of pointless. Once we figured it out, and like, I guess the other side is like, we're still figuring it out. Who the hell am I kidding? It's iterative. Like, I think like the other piece there, and maybe rather than steps, I'll give you the other piece that I'm convinced of. Like, Steve Jobs didn't walk into Apple one day and go, we're going to make a fucking slick phone with a touch screen and like, it's going to change the world. I'm pretty sure he was like, phones kind of suck, guys. What can we do about it? And like, I just don't believe that he was like, I am going to make the iPhone. I just struggle. I struggle to imagine a person who's capable of that. And like, maybe he did, but like, there's sort of like mythology that's created around a lot of these companies. And then when you like scrape away all the shit, it's like, no, like, it was a fucking BlackBerry too, and it had big buttons. And then like that was V1, and he was like, not good enough, guys. And then like V200 is the touchscreen iPhone. And I think like the mythology of like what vision is always the polished turd. Like we're perpetually polishing that turd, and like.
I love that.
Don't
we are
look at
perpetually polishing that turd. That's a clip right there.
That goes in the highlight reel.
That's
but like it is like that's literally what we're doing, right? Is like it's perpetual turd polishing, and we eventually like we're never turning it into a fucking diamond, man. I'm not crazy, but like, you know, it's a little less shitty each time, and eventually like we get there. We get to a point where like you hold it up and you're like, yeah, I can go to a fancy restaurant with this and not feel too bad about myself. Yeah.
I love that. I think you hit the nail on the head on two pieces that we do teach with our philosophy, but it's that one, purpose is uncovered, not wordsmithed, right? Sometimes people are like, oh, we gotta figure it out. Let's get a whiteboard and write it up. But it's uncovered through discovery and conversations and putting yourself in hard places. And whoa, where is our line here? What piece do we want? And you used the word consensus earlier, which I really liked. It's just being able to engage in those conversations with your entire team, and then seeing it as iterative. That's it. Like your vision doesn't have to be, it's a polished turd, right? Like I really like that. I think those two pieces are a home run takeaway for us. Constantly iterate it and uncover it versus trying to wordsmith it. Figure out why the fuck do you do what you do, as you said. I emphasize that piece for you. Last question of our podcast here, Sam. Together, it's been really lovely. I'm going to give you this last question. Biggest mistake you've made in all the adventures that you've shared with us so far. Biggest mistake you've made. Let's hear this for the for the listeners.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake I've made repeatedly through my life is not listening to like the voice inside or the like the instinct that I have sooner. So like when I was embarrassed to say like we're slinging divorces online, or I'd say it in a like sort of sarcastic or jokey way because I was a little ashamed, I needed to reflect on why that is. It's kind of like you've got a girlfriend and you don't want to tell any of your friends you've got a girlfriend because you're like embarrassed about her in some way. Like you need to answer why you don't want anyone to know. And I think like when I have those feelings, I've historically run away from them over and over and over.
Interesting.
And I think like, selling divorces online, great example. There were numerous times where I was put in sort of situations I would never want any of my current employees to experience, where I was put in those situations when I was working as a consultant, and like stuff was said that I just like I can't even imagine saying to another person today. And like I should have walked away, but like I was a bit of a coward. Like I just like, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I eventually quit. So yeah. I've got that going for me, but it took me a long time to sort that stuff out. And I think that, the end result was always like, I knew I wasn't going to, last in consulting. I knew that I wasn't going to be a good lawyer. But like I avoided confronting that reality for a long time. I'm not mad for a second that I went to law school. University of Calgary was wonderful. It prepared me for much of what I'm doing today. Like, make no mistake, I'm a better writer. I'm a better critical thinker than I ever would have been if I hadn't had these experiences. But like, I also could have just like listened to my internal purpose a little sooner instead of beating my head against those walls.
Yeah. And Sam, I think that is so wonderful for us to hear here. I think in a world driven by so much data and data analytics, leaders are trying to constantly always look at the data for all decisions. But sometimes some of them are intuitive. Sometimes we have to actually listen to the intuition or use both. Here's the data and here's my intuition, and where does that come to together? And I think that's a key characteristic of leadership that is only honed in over time. So I know you look back at your younger self and wish you leaned into that intuition, but perhaps that intuition had to be trained. Perhaps it's the years of being in these situations that you can now look back to and said, oh, I can hear it, the intuition more clearly now, and I can listen to it better now. And I think that's really powerful that you mentioned from a CEO of a machine learning AI company saying, don't just listen to the data, listen to your intuition too, and I think lean into those. I think that's a really powerful leadership lesson for us to summarize. Sam, any last thoughts for any of our listeners here today?
I'm gonna end with a bit of a hockey metaphor because I think it's really fucking cool. But go to the hard place on the ice. Like I find like we the people who have succeeded with us over time have been the ones who are like totally cool with, like, we call it type 2 fun, but the stuff that's like, it's not fun when you're doing it, but it's fun after to think about that you did it. And like my life has been about pursuing type 2 fun. Like
I love that. Type 2 fun.
Yeah.
Keep going. Ice climbing. You did an insane trip up a mountain. You told me one time.
Mountaineering traverses, like real suffering. And like, you're not necessarily happy when you're doing it, but when you're done it, you're like, I just fucking did that. I bike long distances just to test my personal endurance at this point. Bennett and I this summer are going to ride from Ottawa to James Bay. We're going to go swim in the Arctic Ocean by bike. Oh my God. Like it's finding our limits. And I think like, if you've got that mentality, like, fuck, entrepreneurship's a blast. Yeah. It's a roller coaster. Like, make no mistake, but like, man, it's way more fun when you can like look back and go like, yeah, I made a lot of fucking mistakes, but like, I'm still here.
Yeah. I love that. I think type 2 fun actually aligns itself so well with having a vision. If you have a vision, you're so much more willing to go through the shit to do the type 2 fun, because you're like, I know what I'm doing it for. I know what I'm coming back for. I have the goal. I love that we're ending with that. I'm gonna write that down. Type 2 fun. That's another clip for me. That's a nice little definition. How much type 2 fun are you having in your life? Well, folks, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for giving us your ears. It's always a pleasure. Sam, thank you for being here with us and sharing everything from the turkey farm to selling divorces to the amazing work that you're doing across the world today to protect citizens and civilians across the world by improving technology. Appreciate you. Thank you. That's all for now, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Sam, so much for sharing all of those stories and insights with us here today. And thank to all of you for listening all the way through and joining us on our Unicorn Leaders podcast. It is always a blast to have you here. And if you've got any questions for Sam, you've got any questions for me, you've got any topics that you'd want us to unpack with future guests, remember to message us on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Twitter. You can find our handle, Fahad Al-Hatab, or you can find me right through email, fahad@unicornlabs.ca. Make sure to check out for any show notes or transcriptions our website, unicornlabs.ca/podcast. And you'll be able to rate our content, review it, subscribe, and get notified when the next episode is coming. Be sure to share with your friends, your fellow managers, fellow colleagues. Spread the word about the show and everyone that you think needs to hear it. And I'm going to leave you with one last kind of big question to unpack. Do you have a compelling why? Do you have a purpose for your work? A vision for how you see the world, how the world should be because of the work you do, where the world will become because of your company. A vision that both entices your people and emotionally compels them, your team, and compels you. Because if not, I think you are missing out. You have an opportunity to not just chase profits, and not saying to just chase purpose, but to chase purpose and profits, because they actually feed into each other, allowing us to create a sustainable world that better impacts your community. And yeah, I didn't finish that one well. We're going to redo that. It's good. Good first try.
Yeah, good first try.
I'm going to leave you with one last question to really think about. It's a big question. It's questions within the question. But it is, do you have a compelling why? Do you have a purpose for your work? Do you have a vision for how the world will become because of your company? A vision that both entices the people that work for you, work with you, but that also emotionally compels them and emotionally compels you. I believe we're missing out when we don't have that purpose. If we're simply chasing profits, we're missing out on the opportunity to actually make more profits, because it is not about purpose or profits. It's actually purpose and profit. It is when we chase both in succinct pattern. When we chase purpose, we get profits because it becomes sustainable, because we're creating something that actually creates value, that actually creates change in our communities and our societies. And I think, as Sham shared with us, when we chase purpose, we find profits along the way. And that is the lesson for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that you take that question and really unpack it with your team. Do we have a compelling why that we're proud of? And if not, can we create one?